I'm not getting everyone. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this panel. This is Xavier's panel and baby Xavier's journey. My vision was just to bring professional people together and talk about mental health in all different levels of the aspirin. And I'm glad everyone that who came so we can talk and have a conversation because in the African American and the African Caribbean, we sweep things under the rug. And when I watch TV and see mental people doing things, people are just out of control. So I'm glad that everyone that came today, this evening, that we can sit down, all level of different professions can talk about mental health. And I'm so happy that we're here today to do this. And anyone that's going to be watching this on YouTube or Facebook or wherever the platform is, they'll get resources and help how to, even sitting down with a professional just to say, I need help or some kind of resources. So I'm just thinking, my vision is just coming together, talking, and we can move on from there and give some kind of help and resources and move on. So, okay. And the thing what I want to do is, could everyone introduce their name? Well, say your name, your title, and what's your background.
Not everybody go at the same time.
Right. So who do you want to start with? Who do you want to start with?
Xavier? Okay. We can go with John. Go ahead. You go first.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. John Young. I am a educator who has been working in the field for approximately 35 years. I've been a classroom teacher in the Washington, D.C. school system. I've been a professor at Purdue University and an academic writing advisor at Columbia University Teachers College. I presently have my own organization. I don't really like to refer to it as a business because it's more of a ministry for me because I love what I do. And it's college advising and mentoring, particularly as it is directed toward African descended males. So that's, and then I do a lot of community work in the Black same gender loving community. So that's my very, very brief bio.
Okay. Pastor I'm sorry. Pastor Nancy Watson, Dr. Nancy Watson.
Hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here and to meet you all. Okay, so I'm excited for this discussion and we can go forth. Like Xavier said, I am Nancy, Pastor Dr. Nancy Watson. I have a church in Dover, Delaware, Smyrna, Delaware, called New Life Ministries. Been in ministry for over 35 years. I'm also, in terms of my career, I'm also a licensed social worker and a director of social services, which working as a social worker for over 25 years, you've seen a lot work in different capacities in terms of adult mental health, child mental health, and also speaking from the perspective of mental health within the church. Which is not often heard of, but it's real. So I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight to see what is being shared.
Nice.
What about, okay, Dr. Tanya? Is she around? Okay, Valerie, go ahead.
Oh, hi. I'm Dr. Valerie Small, and I'm a doctor in sociology and cultural trauma, and I really focus on the construction of memory and trauma and how people remember traumatic events and how they place them in their biography and navigate through life. I also work with my main passion is working with the underserved community, which are many communities, but one at the top is domestic violence survivors. Okay, both men and women. So I've been working with them for a number of years now. The number of years is about 5-6 years. I've been working in that community. In addition to that, I am a college professor. I'm an educator, and I teach a lot of courses in communication and self-development. So that's what I do. And I want to say thank you, Xavier, for having me here with this prestigious individuals, and I'm able to share this platform with them. And I'm looking forward to engaging and learning much from them. So thank you for having me.
You are. Is Dr. Tanya? Dr. Tanya? Okay. The other two, we're gonna just move on because the other two is not here. So basically, okay. So I had an open. This is an open conversation that I wanted to have with 2 questions. I had 5, but I said let's go down to just 2 questions because talking sometimes just on one sentence or one statement says a lot. But before we do that, I'm going to. In the beginning, I was going to do a trial run and just have everyone come together and then we just talk. But my spirit was leading me. It needs to be recorded. It needs to be. The body needs to be edified. We need to be educated, and then we can run on and help someone else. So everyone can just subscribe to Xavier's ZxaviersJourney on YouTube, because God has been just opening the door for me to just talk about different topics and share what's on my heart. So this is why this panel was made. And so I just had 2 questions. I'm going to do one and let Valerie do the next one for me. When I'm saying, okay, talking about mental health on every level, it's basically we don't talk about it. Only if you feel that you need help, then you go seek help. So the persons that are out there that are talking to themselves and don't want to do it, we want to give them resources and have a conversation where we can help them. And so the first question is, what is mental health to you in your own words, in your own field? Anyone can go. Valerie, you're muted.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I guess I might just lead the way with this a little bit. And I'm glad that Dr. Young and Dr. Watson is here again, so then they can help us all navigate through this. So from my perspective, from the point of view with dealing with trauma, what is mental health? Mental health for me, when I am speaking to individuals, I usually deal with people that have experienced some type of trauma in their life. And again, I'm talking about, it could be as far as domestic violence. And I'll just stay there because that's my background with working with those individuals. So the traumatic event, Xavier, is that they were engaged in a relationship that was outside of what we quote unquote would say normal, and it had affected them in the way that led them to probably experience some emotional, physical, spiritual, social trauma that interrupted their normal course of life. So when we're talking about mental health, when we and dealing with those domestic violence survivors, we're talking about individuals that have had a shock, some type of emotional trauma shock, And again, it's physical, and sometimes it gets physical. So the trauma could be physical, as I said, it could be emotional, and it could be mental. So that's what it looks like for me and how I would place it. And then I come aboard and I deal with them in the areas of now recovery with and approaching it. How are we now with self-development? Okay, we have to redevelop some things that they probably had lost. Okay, self-esteem, self-confidence, and those things. So that's what I would say.
What about you, John? Dr. John?
Well, first of all, I want to be transparent that I am not a mental health professional. I do not have any credentials in mental health. I'm not licensed. I'm not a licensed therapist.
Mhm.
I'm not a licensed psychiatrist or psychologist. So I'm speaking from my experience um, of, of over 30 plus years in education and how interacting with primarily adolescents and adults, young adults,
Mhm.
and observing their behavior and doing outside reading, how that has informed my practice in terms of delivering educational services to these people. So I think that mental health is revolves around um, equilibrium, having an equal or a um, not normalized, but it's being. I'm trying to find the words under calm, having a balance. That's the word. A balance in terms of emotion, uh, the ability to react, to function in society.
Mhm.
So having this balance that can aid the person or aid the student in my particular profession, people who are in a learning environment, and how they can adjust to their to a standard mainstream educational environment for the most part. So that's what I think uh, like mental health is for students that I've worked with and how I view students, and then allowing them to get the support and help in whatever fashion that they need, whether be it development of personal skills, a vocation, a gift, or a mental state of being
Mhm.
where they need support to adjust to being in a particular environment. So that's how I would surmise.
Okay. What
Yeah.
about you, Dr. Watson?
Okay. So I look at mental health uh, from the perspective of it is our psychosocial, it's our social well-being, it's the emotional part of who we are. Um, and mental health, it's important because it comes from various stages of our lives. So from childhood to adolescent to an adult, um, we go through the stages of mental health. However, the tool of mental health is how do we handle life stressors appropriately? Um, and how we handle them will determine will bring an outcome. So I like what Dr. Valerie has said, that, you go through trauma. It happens. It can happen in the stage of our adulthood. It could happen in a child. It could happen as adolescent. But to mental health, thinking on just your health of your body, just generally, how you're going to handle that trauma, will allow you to go through stages of life, appropriate or inappropriately. So for example, let me just give an example. So saying if I'm angry, right? I can be angry, but how would I handle my anger? Will I handle it in a healthy way?
Mhm.
Or will I handle it in a way where I want to lash out at everybody?
Right.
So it just pick out different areas. Okay, so for example, another example, I lost my mother. That was traumatic for me. Okay, so it will say, Nancy, how are you going to handle this grief? What is appropriate way? And it's a learned behavior to what is an appropriate way for me to handle grief. If it is not educated or handled appropriately, then you're not possessing the appropriate mental health. Does that make sense? I don't know. That's what it means to me. Like, so it's how are you going to handle it? So the doctor tells me, another example, and I'm done. So the doctor tells me I have high blood pressure. So I'm going to go, how are you going to handle that? Are you going to go and eat fried chicken every day, every moment? Like, are you going to go to McDonald's and get the French fries? Like, you have high blood pressure. What are you going to do with your body? Are you going to handle it appropriately? These are the stages. Because if not, then you're going into a stage of your life which is not healthy. So then they're going to take me more medication and more medication, more. Just when it started off with one pill of 25 milligrams, now I have. You ever seen that when a doctor said, well, just watch your diet, and then you don't, and the next time you got to take medication?
Yes.
It's the same thing with mental health. How are we going to handle ourselves appropriately when the stressors of life or trauma do exist? And it will. It
Yes.
will. So how are you going to handle it?
So then I have a question. So then I have another question then. So what is trauma then? Because I'm hearing a whole lot of trauma.
Wait a minute. Wait. We can't even go there yet because this is
Because everybody's saying trauma. That's why I'm saying, okay, so what is
Wait, hold on. Hold on, Xavier. You two,
trauma can be
Young and Watson are loaded today.
Well, trauma literally can be, well, anyone can have a traumatic experience. So my trauma may be different than yours. Right. However, it could be the same situation, but I handle it differently.
Yeah.
Which in my experience became traumatic.
Right.
Okay, so for example, I talked about death, right? So the experience of death in a 5-year-old losing their mother, or the experience in death in a 30-year-old losing their mother, is a different experience. So a 5-year-old, that may be very traumatic for them, or a 7-year-old, I've lost my mommy. My mommy's not going to be there through high school. My mommy's not going to be there through the norms, through the things, the highlights of life. That's traumatic for a 7-year-old. Versus the 30-year-old will say, well, my mom's been there for me. A 40-year-old, 50, my mom's been there for me all my life. This is the process and development of life. She has to move on. It's a different experience.
But can I say something, Dr. Watson?
Yes.
Hold on, Xavier. Let me just say something because I tell you the two of them are loaded. You're saying a lot, and I like the way you and Dr. Young, when he talked about he's dealing with it from the collegiate level, from with students, with young adults, right? And then you just mentioned that it's stages in life, okay? The development of stages in life. And let me just say this, from my perspective, we would hope, now watch this, we would hope and pray that someone who is 7 that is experiencing grief and someone that is 34 or 30 plus experiencing it, that it would be different. We will hope But in some cases, Dr. Watson, it is not. And I think the key is what you and Mr. Young were saying. Dr. Young had said, in our life, we go through stages and there's steps. And if certain stages and steps have not, were not developed fully, is there, and I pose this question to the two of you, and Xavier, you jump into, is it possible that because we missed one stage or something was interrupted traumatically, that we are unable to actually fulfill some other areas in our life, quote unquote, in a normal, quote, healthy way, based on what you and Dr. Young was saying, Dr. Watson? I know that was a full question, but your responses to Xavier.
Right.
Xavier, you want to say anything before they respond? I just
No, I love it. I love it. I love it. Because what it is, everyone is okay. When everyone made their statement, I kept on hearing trauma. So I said, okay, so define what trauma is in our experiences. Like when I lost my brother, I lost it versus other people that I've lost in my family. And so I still get emotion. So that would be, I would say for me, that was my oldest. Oh God, it was my older brother. What happened here, Lord Jesus? What is going on today, Lord Jesus? Sorry. Like
Okay.
when my brother died, it's like I went through stages of, I thought about
grief.
as
Stages of grief. That's
grief.
It's Kohlberg stages of grief.
Right. And even today, it's been 3 years. I can watch something on the TV and tears come down like a flood. And then there's something else can come on, or someone said something. I'm laughing, and I remember something that me and my brother laughed about. And so I'm grateful for the waves of grieving, because some people think you should just grieve because for the rest of your life. No, it comes in stages. And I thank God for good friends and family members that we can remember the good times and live every day. Okay, so y'all go on. So the trauma now, I'm hearing trauma.
Okay.
So Dr. Young, so Dr. Young, then you go. So let's get this, let's say what it is by definition. Trauma is by definition is an interruption of your normal life, a pattern that you had that was consistent, and is an interruption by something that caused distress. Okay, so let's say that. So we're going along our life the way Dr. Young and Dr. Watson has said, but then there was an interruption, and whatever it may be. And I like the fact that Dr. Young is about to elaborate on grief, because that's something major, because I lost my mother when I was 4. Okay, when I was 4 years old, I lost my mother, and it was very deeply distressing for me, even though I didn't know fully what was going on, but it was very distressing. So personal trauma could be the loss, and that's what we're dealing with, death, but it's something definitely that interrupts and is disturbing to the normal lifestyle that someone may have. So I just wanted to say that, Dr. Young, so we can get that clear. It's something that is distressing, that interrupt your normal lifestyle or the way you were navigating through life. Go ahead, Dr. Young.
Okay. So two things. I guess I'll do Dr. Small what you were saying first about the trauma and the interruption of the stage. Once again, I am not a degreed professional with a license or experience as a caregiver provider, as a therapist or psychologist. So this is just coming from my personal experience. So I definitely want to make sure that's absolutely clear.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's why I said you can do it on. We could talk about it on personal works or even by life experiences.
No, so, but what the reason why I'm saying this is because I may make a recommendation or a suggestion, and I don't want to be sued legally because I got on here and said something and
Okay.
somebody did something and then got in trouble, and they said Dr. Young said this, that, and the other thing. So
Right.
for legal purposes, that's why I'm saying this.
Okay.
About first, like I said, about Dr. Small's trauma and stages of it. So my experience, and I have been a recipient of therapy for many years. And what I've learned over that time span of therapy is that trauma really does impact a stage of development. And this is particularly the case with children. When children experience trauma where there is a break or interruption or some sort of event that happens that interferes with their normal stages of growth and development, that can have a lasting impact, or it does impact that particular child through adulthood, through middle age, even in some instances, the senior stage of life. And for many African American people, because of a whole variety of things, a whole variety of experiences and cultural, as Dr. Watson does, talks about, or is it Dr. I know either Small or Watson, you deal with culture. Which one is the cultural person?
I do culture.
Oh, yeah.
But Dr. Watson does too, because she's a pastor in the church. So that's culture.
Oh, okay. So yeah, right, exactly. Because they have a lot to do with it. The training, the thinking, and most importantly, the beliefs and philosophies that are formed will dictate as to how that trauma, either recognized trauma or unrecognized trauma, is addressed or not addressed. So I think that was a really, really very important point that Dr. Smalls made about the interruption of growth and development or some sort of event. Now, the second thing I want to say about Zxavier about grief is that grief is never ending. Grief can take shape and form over the lifetime of a person, and that we all hear, or most of us have heard the pithy maxim about don't tell somebody how to grieve, because don't tell people how to grieve, or don't tell people they should cry, or you never, what my therapist used to say, don't shoulda on people.
Right.
Don't shoulda on so and so. So you should do this, or you should do that, or you should do the other because your grandmother died, or your father left you, or whatever the scenario is. But particularly like with grief, like, oh, well, how come you haven't cried? I didn't see you. I saw you at the funeral and you weren't crying. Or get on the phone and say, oh, girl, did you see so and so? They were like, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. I wonder what's going on.
Gossip.
And so it's so understanding that people grieve all sorts of ways. And that grief can, as you said, Zxavier, you could be watching a TV show and not even think of whatever. Then all of a sudden you were triggered by something you may have seen or heard or whatever, and you just start laying out bawling. Or you might start talking about somebody, and we're talking about whatever topic it is, and then, oh, I remind, my dad used to do that, or my mom used to do that, and I miss her because she used to do the same thing or say the same phrase or cook the same meal or whatever the item is. So I think that your grieving may never end. It may never end. It may not end until you end. So that's what I just wanted to address to what you were saying about grieving.
Right. So they're triggers. In essence, they're triggers.
Right. They are triggers. Exactly.
Right.
They're triggers.
Xavier,
Yeah.
can I just ask Dr. Watson?
Go ahead. You
if
have the
she-
floor.
Oh, no. Dr. Watson, based on what Dr. Young just said, how does that show up in the place of church?
I'm so glad you asked that because I was making my little notes so I don't forget. Honestly.
Tell it. You better tell it.
You know, he mentioned something about recognize and unrecognize trauma experiences. So, for example, someone or grief.
Right.
People, what I realized in the church, people handle grief differently, like you have outlined, Dr. Young, and Dr. Small. You mentioned of how people handle trauma, the stresses, this distress, and the disturbances of life. And what I find, they go on and on in life, and they exhibit behaviors which have become a norm.
Mhm.
And they have not dealt with the grief or the trauma. And what I find is that members, or generally people of a whole, just being in the church all my life appear to be, that they do not even recognize that I am dealing with this trauma. That no one has ever came to me and just asked me a simple question: are you okay? Literally. And they go on, and then they exhibit these behaviors and develop these personalities. And you're looking like, you really need some help. And I find that literally, and I find that in the church, we tend to become spiritual with it. And we say, and we categorize it into words such as it's a spirit, or it's or you in so many different words. And where you look at them, you say, they just haven't talked to somebody about that issue or that trauma that happened at 10 years old,
Right.
or dealt with the loss of their daddy, their mommy, their grandmother, whatever, at 5 years old. And they go into this shell. They become introverts. They go into the shell, and they develop all these. That's just Johnny. They just quiet. No, Johnny is not quiet. Johnny is just dealing with something that no one ever saw. He misses his mom. He misses his mom. Oh, Johnny need prayer. He ain't acting right. No. Johnny need a little help. Come on there, Johnny. Give me a hug, baby. You need a little help. And you'll look over that. And it's so sad. So sad. Because now they grow up to adulthood and no one is recognizing that Johnny's just dealing with trauma or grief. I tell you, it's sad.
So Dr. Watson, hold on, Xavier. Let me just ask you this. So in the church, we're dealing with spiritual trauma, and we don't even know it, and we're really not dealing with it.
Yes.
And in addition to that, let me say this. Let me ask this, because I wrote this down as you were speaking. Then we grow into adults, and the expectation we want from our spouse is to be our trauma counselor. This is a whole nother something that's going on. So we have people getting engaged and married, okay, but they have not, as you said, and as we said, gone through any type of counseling to deal with the trauma from when they were 5, when they were 10, when they were 16. And now they are adults taking it into the church, because they are the church, bringing it in at the church platform. And then they're married, and they're expecting certain things from their spouse. And the spouse can't deliver, really, because we haven't dealt with our trauma.
Absolutely. And if I may add to that, Dr. Small, they also birthing children, having families,
Yes.
Being
and
passed
the dysfunction being a norm.
Yes.
It's not normal. No,
Yes.
it's and you have a generation that's like, oh, they were mommy and daddy did it this way, and then you have Aunt Lily Bell and Uncle Sam did it. No. But it's not normal.
It's not normal.
But I like to just to present to you, Dr. Watson, because I was thinking about this earlier when we were going to have this discussion about actually saying, because what I said earlier, I did not use like normal, because when we use words like normal, what is normal? Normal, like it could be your normal, may be different from my normal, which may be different from Xavier's normal, which could be different from Dr. Small's normal. So we run into a like a quagmire or a little bit of a whatever when we start saying, okay, well, so and so's acting normal. So I think it's like what I was saying when I first started talking about societal norms, because societal norms dictate what you're referring to, like quote unquote, what's normal, and how people are supposed to behave. But then you have geniuses, you have artists like Basquiat, Michel Basquiat, who did all sorts of different whatever, and he was this creative genius. And like, well, you're not normal, like you're not going out to work 9 to 5 or whatever, but you're creating this sketches and paintings and whatnot that are selling. Now he's been dead for I don't know how long. They're going for hundreds of millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So what am I saying, John? What I'm saying that it's just like when we say normal, when we say whatever, to be either be qualify it, this is how I'm qualifying normal, or having some sort of word that gives an exception to or defines how are you talking about normal. So that's the only thing. But the other point too, and I'm going to get off and stop talking, is about we talk about history. Well, what do you mean history? The history and the culture of Black folks going back to great grand so and so who cooked black-eyed peas and rice for New Year's, and we've been doing it for 10 generations. And how's that relevant? Well, because we were stripped of our culture, we were stripped of our language, we were stripped of everything when we were stolen from our homeland and brought here, and we created our own culture. And we were forced to have religion. And this is where I'm getting to about the church. We were forced to adopt this religion and do what you do, make up whatever you want to make up with the religion to become a part of our culture. So consequent to that, we have these standards or these customs or these ways that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation. Oh, you got the devil in you, so we got to pray for you because you got the devil in you, and you know that spirit, like you said, that spirit is going. We're going to do something to get the prayer oil, and get that prayer cloth, and what we're going to lay that on you, and we're going to put this $10 bill, whatever, and make you better. And so the history of that, and it's like what you were saying about the children, we pass this on from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. Okay, So here comes Khalil, and he's acting a fool in the church. He can't do anything with them, and people are talking. Oh boy, he's just off. Oh. So well, let's try to. It's not like, okay, well, maybe we should talk to him, or maybe we should have Dr. Small or Dr. Watson come and talk to him, because they have the training and the education and the experience to deal with the mental health. Because no, we got to get that oil. We got to get that. We got to get Reverend Dr. So-and-so and Bishop what you call it to come over here to lay hands and have a prayer circle. And where does that come from? It comes from generations of how a lot of us have been taught, and it becomes a tradition. And
so basically, it would be generations of overcoming trauma and not.
Well, that's how we have been taught how we should handle trauma, instead of, okay, well, let's now look at this as from a psychological perspective, or this therapy or whatever, because that's some white folks. I was gonna say a bad word. That's some white folks stuff. And like, we don't take him to Dr. Watson, take him to Dr. Jesus. How many folks have heard that? Take him to Dr. Jesus instead of taking him to Dr. Watson has a PhD in psychology. So that's what brought, I guess it brought the spirit out of me when she said what she said, because our history of being in this country and being indoctrinated with religion and all of that has really impacted to where we are today.
Okay. I love how we all blend.
Yes.
We're all vibing off each other. So Valerie's going to go to the next question, because it's going well. I'm loving it. I'm getting educated.
So am I. So am I.
Tanya's around. Tanya's
I think
around.
she's in the car. She's in her car.
Yeah, she's around. And the other two, Khalil, I think, moved out of the state. And I don't know what happened to the other one, but he was supposed to move Saturday or Sunday.
Oh, he moved already.
We'll get him the next time, because wherever he is, we can still go virtual.
So Xavier, so what did you want to address the next? Did you want to talk about how can we deal with, what are some of the suggestions for mental health? What contributes to, how would a healthy mental person, what could we do? Is that what we want to talk about now? What are some of the things that we can do?
Yeah, like
some solutions, probably. Is that what you?
Right. That's what I was trying to do, because when I was asking, my mind was saying one thing, but when I wrote it down, it came out another. So basically, like, I wanted to target, like, we did talk about church and the simple the things that we have done in church. When I said healthcare, I meant really the hospital. Normally, when you deal with mental, so basically, I would say, what is healthy mental? Is it right? Mentally healthy, or the side effects? If you grew up in a good home and you had the teachings, and so you're living well, what happened to the other side where other people grew up in trauma?
Well, Xavier, I want us to, like Dr. Young had said, and we should probably be mindful of the language. Okay. And Dr. Watson, I want you to definitely contribute to this, because whenever someone says anything to me that this is good, I always ask my students when they say, oh, this is great, this is good. they say, Professor Small, I like you. You are great. I always pause and say, what's so great about me?
Right.
What is your definition of great? What is
Right.
your definition of good? What does
Right.
that actually look like? Because
Okay.
what
Right.
looks good to me
Right.
may not look
Right.
good to them. So
Okay.
Dr. Watson being in the church and having dealt with a lot of individuals or come across individuals that had traumatic relationships. When we talk about what does a mentally healthy person look like, and you had mentioned they grew up in a good atmosphere. I don't know what that really is, because we have some individuals, quote unquote, in Hollywood. We have some people that are making 6 figures plus. They have the money, they have the homes, they have all of the trappings of life to some degree, if they are trappings, because sometimes they're not trappings, they are blessings. Okay. So
Right.
the same blessings can become trappings for others. So it's a
Right.
trap for some and it's a blessing for others. So when we're talking about what does looking mentally healthy, what does that look like? I don't know. We should hear from Dr. Watson. What exactly are we saying? What is it that you're asking Xavier? How should we place this? Because remember, if people are listening, we don't want people to get an idea that because you probably grew up in quote unquote impoverished neighborhood, and then one grew up in another neighborhood, that this is great and this is not great. Okay. That's not what I'm saying. What we want to deal with is, how can we, where we at, become mentally healthy so that we can navigate through the trauma that we probably experience in life, so that we no longer be in a state of depression and sadness, because those things will happen. You will get depressed, you will get sad as you going through life. But like Dr. Watson said, how do we deal with this? How do we navigate when we are when we are in that space? So what does it look to be mentally healthy? That's what I think that we want to say.
Dr. Small, I just wanted to ask you, so when you say mental, have we agreed upon what mentally healthy is, or what it is, or what it looks like?
Well, see, that's my question. That's what I'm posing, Dr. Young. How could we really define what a mentally healthy person is? And I think Dr. Watson had said, if we can deal with where we are at accordingly in the best possible way, quote unquote, and you said it, with the norm of society, where we're not doing harm to ourselves and we're not doing harm to others. You see?
Yes.
That's what I would think in terms of, am I in a state of mind, Dr. Young and Dr. Watson and Xavier, am I in a state of mind that the decisions that I'm making are not causing harm to myself and to others? That's how I would just go that route with it. You know, because someone could be living in an impoverished community, but they still are healthy mentally, okay, and socially, because they are making these decisions that they're not doing harm to themselves and to others. I don't know. I want you, Dr. Watson, from the church perspective, how do you feel about that? You and Dr. Young, Dr. Watson.
There's so many things. Oh my goodness, I just don't even know where to start. But there's so many things to. I just stopped writing. I said I can't even put it on paper. So I want to go back to the statement when I made that, you know, that people are functioning in ways that are not the norm. So I go back to it like a doctor. If you go to a doctor and you know your temperature is 104, the doctor would say, well, do you feel better now after I gave you medication? Okay. And the person said, well, I feel better. So you feel normal now? Yes. You know within yourself when that temperature have been risen.
Right.
Okay. Now, I don't know anyone that would like to walk around with 104 or 102 temperature every day.
No.
You know, and some people say, well, that's my normal. I always get a fever. No, fever indicates that there is an infection or something in your body. And that's the same naturally where I take it in the same context. Mental health, you want to maintain a balance. The Latin word T square, you want to be able to come and meet all ends. You want to be able in your life to meet all ends, meaning that if I've gone through trauma but I'm sleeping all day, wake up in the morning, I sleep. Go to bed at night, I sleep. That's all I do is sleep. You can't go anywhere outside. Okay. Is that a norm for you? Is that how you want to live? Well, because I just don't feel like it. I don't feel like eating. I don't feel like taking a bath. You have now interrupted daily activities of daily living. Okay. We all know you need to take a bath in order to be clean. We all know you need to eat in order to be healthy, to keep your physical body functioning. When somebody does not do these things, that is not the norm. No. Because a plant needs water and needs sunlight. You do not give a plant water or sunlight, they will die. Okay, so speaking in that context, okay, normal meaning that you need the necessary things in order to survive. When you are not meeting those needs, okay, that is not normal. Okay, so now that's one aspect. When you come to the church in terms of culture, there's a variety of culture. I mean, Dr. Young, you mentioned in the church, you have everything. I mean, what consider a norm in certain cultures of certain churches or religion-based or spiritual-based organizations is very broad. Okay, so you could have one religion where they believe in using oil, and whereas another religion believes in using water. Mm-hmm. I mean, whereas in another religion they believe in using fire. I mean, if that's your culture, if that works for you, that to meet the square, okay, back to the Latin word, to bring to your ends, that works for you. So if you're saying that if I pray for this person and I believe through the prayer that they're going to be healed, if that's your belief, if that's your faith for you to produce this norm, then God bless you. That's the best way I can say, because everyone have their culture and their own belief. And I would dare not touch that, because if that's your belief, and some people, some cultures really believe in prayer, whereas some cultures do not. They believe in holistic medication. They believe in chanting, and that works for them. That's where they be able to get their peace, and they hold some to deal with trauma or grief, So it depends on that culture of belief. I just want to share that piece. So Dr. Small, I guess what you're saying, when you deal with mental health in the church and how to deal with it and how to become better, or how to get to a medium, it depends on that belief of that person, the belief of that person. And again, there's a lot of beliefs out there. There are a lot. But again, it's what can I do to help you so you can go from point A to point B, so you can become whole.
Okay. Dr. Tanya, you on mute. Unmute yourself.
I enjoy being in the dialogue and in the conversation. And I think that what is difficult for me is the idea that we have any kind of solution that has just one prong. And solutions require a multifaceted approach, so that whatever your faith is, you delve into that faith. But you also understand that pain lives in the body, and that you have to do certain body practices to get rid of that pain. You also understand that there's some people who only approach this from a cognitive place. They don't have a relationship with God. They don't have a relationship with their body. They only do the work through thinking. And wherever people are, that's where you to face with them, and then try to bring in a multiplicity of healing modalities. And I'm always about solutions, about how is it that we deal with it, because I think that in our community, we recognize it, we know it. I think that from what one of my colleagues said earlier, though, that perhaps we need to really educate people about those activities of daily living, that when they are not there as we are expecting them to be, that those are signals to us, and that we begin to define for people what is it to be depressed in a way that they can really understand it. What does it mean to be agoraphobic and not go outside? What does it mean to have social anxiety? What does it mean to substitute relationships with alcohol? What does it mean when the incidence of divorce in our community is so high? Or the fact that people are single for so long is so vast? What do those things mean in terms of not just the individual mental health, but the mental health of our culture in general? And I think that in order to get to rooted answers that make sense, we have to define for people in language that is real and embraceable what it is that we're talking about. So, the place that I start any discussion about mental health, emotional well being, spiritual richness is with embracing the person who comes into my office and finding out from them, how do they sleep? How do they eat? What is their exercise like? What does their family tree look like? Because I'm a family physician, and one of the ways that we were um, instructed on doing good medicine was to look at family and to use the knowledge about family to interface with the human being that's in our office. After you do the family tree, after you do the social habitus, after you look at the work history, after you look at the sleep and exercise and nutrition, then you get into the meat of who it is that that person before you is. And then you begin to look for those mind-body disconnections. And when you see those mind-body disconnections, you don't stop there. You begin to probe a little deeper. And I'm saying that this is not one visit. This is many visits over time. And I think that part of the equation that's missing from our culture, from our environment, from the place that we need it, is to help people to understand that when trauma occurs and is expressed as anxiety or depression or a multiplicity of things, it could be associated dissociative disorder that trauma presents as. Maybe some of the people on this call are old enough to hear about a film called Sybil that Sally Field did many years ago, where she was many people. We called it in the past multi-personality disorder. And we don't think about it existing in our community, but it does. I have several people in my practice who have what we call today dissociative disorder. So one day it could be Beth who comes in, one day it could be Sally, one day it could be Shaniqua, but they all be the same person. Now, where did that come from? That doesn't just arrive. So we have to deal with what it is that predated all of that. And whatever that trauma is, then deal with it. And most importantly, understand that the regrowth and rebirth of that individual takes a lot of time. Dr. John Young spoke earlier of being in therapy for not a year, not 2 years, not 4 years, but a multiplicity of years. And that's the communication that we have to give to people, that they find good relationships with good therapists, and that be part of their plan, but that their faith be another part, and going to play basketball be another part, and developing relationships that are healing relationships be another part. Because mental health isn't one thing, it's a multiplicity of things. There's no way we can be mentally healthy and not take in enough zinc in our diet. not have enough sunshine, not have enough love, enough faith. Those are all things that take time to regain once they've been eliminated from us for whatever the trigger was. So I'm listening to all my colleagues and I'm gaining a lot and I'm thinking about a lot and I'm remembering all the faces of people because as a family physician, I see very young kids. I remember a 4-year-old who I was following in an inpatient psychiatric center. It was the saddest case I've ever had in my life. This 4-year-old, every single day, would find a way to escape from his locked room in that psychiatric institute in upstate New York. And he would go running outside because he was running to find what? His mother. He knew at just 4 years old, this young African American boy born in May, I remember that what was missing from his life was love, was his mother. And he didn't know where this place was. He just knew it wasn't right.
Mhm.
And the fact that we don't have a system in place because we're so disconnected from each other to embrace this young boy saddened my heart. So instead, what we have is a cage that we put him in and we call it a hospital. What we have are medications that we dose on him because we don't know another way of dealing with his so-called bad behavior. I didn't think his behavior was bad at all. He was crying and screaming and running away because he wanted love. A simple ingredient, but something we are all seeking and wanting and needing, and yet not understanding that that's such a core piece. So I think about a lot when y'all talk and chat. And I have all of these people because all I used to do was HIV and AIDS medicine. And HIV and AIDS medicine, when I was doing it, before we had all the medications, created this huge disconnection. I mean, can you imagine when you talk about grief and terror and trauma of not just the person with the diagnosis who doesn't have the medications, but all the people around them in the community and how it all happened, and the fact that we don't want to talk about it, and the fact that we're putting them as other, or when I'm serving patients in the hospital, some of my colleagues, being it other physicians or nurses, don't want to go in and touch the patients or bring them food. I mean, I think about trauma in so many different ways, and I've been doing medicine for a couple years now, and I tell you, the journey of healing is so important, but it takes a multiplicity of ways to do it with a lot of support. And what I'm going to end with, because I have so much to say, but I don't want to be long-winded, is that I really believe that by structuring our communities again in an intentional way and truly rebuilding our communities, starting with rebuilding ourselves, that's how we get love again. That's how we get support again. That's how we build faith again. And towards that end, I am working with a number of other people of color, primarily Black people, um, African American people, Caribbean American people, South American people, to build intentional community. And we've been fortunate to get land where we can build what we hope is a place of refuge, where people can come and do deep, deep healing work. So that's a little bit of what I'm thinking as I'm listening.
Xavier, can I just say something? Dr. Tanya, I think you said a mouthful. Xavier, I know this is you, but when you were speaking, Dr. Tanya, what came to me was cultural, collective trauma. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a collective. And what is collective trauma? When the community, as Dr. Tanya has said, has really suffered that interruption. And it's going to take, as she said, a holistic approach with building intentional communities to heal and to start the healing process, to restructuring our communities. And like she said, it's going to take at multiple levels, not just spiritual, not just emotional, not just physical, not just mental, but I see that her whole healing connection has to do with mind, body, and soul. And it's so true. All of these are connective, and it's not one way of getting a healing. But I have to say thank you, Dr. Tanya. I have so many notes written down, and you are exactly right. Pain lives in the body, and that's how we are responding. When something trigger, we're really responding from a place, a lot of times, from pain. That's what we're responding from a place, or reacting. Because when I teach, I say there's a difference between reacting and responding. And a lot of times we are reacting as opposed to responding to some degree. But as Dr. Tanya said, that's what we're actually doing. And it's the pain in the body. And I just wanted to say that. Xavier, back to you. Thank you, Dr. Tanya. Thank you.
Dr. Tanya, turn on some light so I can see you, please.
Dr. Tanya, thank you.
But
Thank you.
I really appreciate her coming in and giving us a full valuation of the conversation. I'm grateful for that. And so let me ask a question. Okay, we did the church, we did the school. How does targeting these areas like the home, the everyday life, and sometimes some people have to take medication. The doctors have to you see the psychotherapist, and depending on what the psychotherapist is getting in the room with the patient, then they refer them to the psychiatrist, where medication has to keep them on a level for them to live in a daily life every day.
I thought Dr. Tanya, she covered that.
Okay.
I didn't know. Let her continue. I didn't know, Dr. Tanya, did you do that in a nutshell? I kind of got a couple of things, because especially when she gave the example of the 4-year-old at the hospital. I mean, I didn't know, Dr. Tanya, Dr. Watson, what do you think? I mean, to that question, Dr. Young.
I have just so much to say. I just believe that we are so psychopharmaceutically based because there's so much money to be made in psychotherapeutics. So I want y'all to hold that in your left hand, and then understand that there's a right hand. And in the right hand is the fact that sometimes you do need it. Sometimes when people are so anxious, so depressed, so sad, that some of these neurotransmitters need to be rebalanced. And sometimes the medications can help to do that. And so in the right hand, yes. But if we think we don't have a left hand where we have to do other things, we're wrong. It's not enough. We are human. And by the fact that we're human, what we need to thrive is social connection. And when we live in isolation and don't have social connection, that will not allow the depression to leave. I don't care how many psychotherapeutic medications you give someone. Right? So we can come out with another class in another year, in another 10 years, another class. We can do all of these great things, but unless we're aligning all of these other modalities in place, like, why should I not be depressed if I don't have anything that I'm coming home for? I have to have purpose. I have to have meaning. And it doesn't even mean that there's only a certain part of your life that's true. When you're 4, you want to have purpose and meaning, even if it's just to go out and play with other children. When you're 44, you want to have purpose and meaning. And I think that one of the things that I want to reflect on is just how much, and this is a personal reflection now, how much our men have been strapped into this box. I mean, not just entered the box, they are strapped in to thinking that they don't need to do this emotional work. Like, as long as they're providers, as long as they're going to work, as long as they're doing whatever society has said to them is enough. They don't feel that they have to do the other kind of work, which to me is just as heavy and just as needed as that work that I just talked about. So they're getting all these accolades for being whatever at work. They're getting all these accolades from being whatever in sports. They're getting all these accolades for taking their sons and daughters to church, but they're not doing the work. And no
Or
one
not
is
getting
getting
accolades.
them to do the work. And I think that when we do not allow our men to emotionally thrive and dive deep into themselves, we have lost such a crucial part of who we are as a family and as a community. And I can label and name maybe 100 men that I know personally, Black men I'm talking about, who have not done that work. And when they don't do that work, how they leave themselves when they leave this planet is sad. And how they leave their families, because love begins to evaporate when you're not holding up your end of the bargain. You can't expect that your wife, your girlfriend, your lover, whatever, is going to hold both parts all the time. You got to do your work. And too many of us are not. So
I think I just want to add. So with what you're saying too is it relates back to what I was saying about the history and the propagating of continued behavior, because this is what a societal norm has dictated what it should be, how men should behave and act and present themselves or think of their philosophy over a given length of time is just reinforced over the generations that this is how you are. So the solution, and I love that aspect of what you're saying about finding the solution, because I really do believe that. So also is trying to educate and expose, in this particular topic or area, Black men, about how to break cycles, how to break thought patterns, how to, okay, ask why do you feel this way? Why are you not interested in seeing about your health? Why do you have trepidations about talking to someone? What's your issue? And digging deep and deep and deep to really get to like um the core thought of of why you have, or why a person would have resistance from getting the help, because they don't know that that's what it should be done. And it's okay. You're okay. You're okay to seek help. You're okay to go to see a physician. You're okay to talk to someone who you feel comfortable about your feelings and maybe whatever trauma that disrupted your stage that's causing you pain in your body. So yeah, I think that uh, understanding the history of where we're coming from, and then understanding how do we help this person try to make the beginning or initiating getting uh, help, or just changing thinking or a thought process is really important to disrupt, not I would say normalized, but not like what you say, behavior that it hurts the person, that's self-inflicting pain, that's taking over, that prevents them from functioning.
One of the things that I think about is when we're engaging in solutions and building solutions, I just want to put out there a message that I gained from my professor of Black pedagogy when I was a college student. Dr. John and I went to the same college, and that's how we met 5-6 years ago. Y'all know that, right? So anyway, we had a professor of education. His name is Professor Peak, Professor Booker Peak. And one of the things that he taught us in Black pedagogy is that you have 15 to 30 seconds to get your message across. So if we really want to begin to educate our community about what it is that Dr. John just discussed, we've got to really begin to do some hard work about creating vignettes that are 15 to 30 seconds. No talking heads, no long, elongated pontification and all of that. Seconds. You have seconds to get folks in. And I'm not just talking about our 15-year-olds. I'm talking about our 50-year-olds. And if we can do that, I'm hoping, Xavier, you'll move us in that direction. Let us create 15-second vignettes that we can take out to the community and put out there. This is mental health. This is what we need to do, and build on it, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
just know that it has to be like the New York Times, that first sentence. What is the headline? And so that's what I get. And I want to offer to say that is the direction I would like to move in.
Okay, sounds good. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do closing statements. Nancy has to go first because she has to leave. Just a summary of everything we talked about. And if you have any resources that you want to, a hotline that someone can call to get receive help, that would be helpful. And just remember, everyone, Xavier's Journey on YouTube. You can look it up, Xavier, ZxaviersJourney, JOURNEY, and subscribe, like, and make your comments, positive comments, please. So, Pastor Nancy, you can say your summary.
Constructive comments.
Yes.
Well, I first I want to say thank you. It was a very good discussion in terms of talking about mental health, trauma, how to deal with mental health, and mental health within the church and just abroad. So I do appreciate each and every one in your place, and it was good discussion. Thank you, Xavier. Thank you so much for this platform. I really enjoyed myself.
We're gonna do it again. We're gonna do it again.
I really did. I really did. Thank you. That's what I much got to say. Thank you. I really took away nuggets, and I believe that those that will tune in and hear, they will receive as well some good nuggets to take away and how to handle mental health in their area.
Dr. Watkins, can I just ask you real quick before you leave? Is there a place that they can contact? Go to your church as a place of probably rescue?
Absolutely. I'm so sorry. I have a website, NancyWatsonMinistries.org. NancyWatsonMinistries.org, or my church and contact would be 21newlifeministries.com. Yes.
That's my old friend from, we were children growing up. That's my friend.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice meeting you. Thank you.
Likewise. Nice to meet you all.
And thank you, everyone that came on and shared. I'm so happy. This was the vision. You know, I know all of y'all from different eras, but, you know, for me to get this vision, I spoke last Wednesday about mental health, and the Lord just put it in my spirit. Let's come together as a family and discuss different levels of mental health and trauma. And I'm so happy that everyone that did came and gave positive statements and experience. I'm teary-eyed because this is such a burning desire. And I hope that this is not just going to be a one-time thing. My vision is I will share it with you all at a later date, that we come together and we can just talk and educate people. You know, if we edify the body can work in a full healing process. So, Dr. Tanya, you want to do your closing statement? Oh, she has a book. What kind of book is that, Dr. Tanya? We can't hear you.
That's the summary of the book. Because
Okay.
after you finish reading the book, which I'm going to say in a minute, you're going to read the summary, and then you're going to read the analysis, and then you're going to go back and read the book a second time. It's so good. But it's called My Grandmother's Hands.
Yes.
And the subtext is Racialized Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies by Resmaa Menakem. And it's all about embodied healing work and how most of us as Black people have been traumatized, and that trauma sits in our DNA. And in order to let go of the trauma from our DNA, that there are various body techniques that we can do to let go of that trauma. So again, for your audience, Xavier, it's called My Grandmother's Hands. That's all they have to remember. My grandmother's hands, because we know how magical they are. And that's what this book is about. It's about Resmaa's grandmother and her healing hands and how that lifted him up so that he could do the work that he's doing for our community now.
And maybe
So,
Tanya, Dr. Tanya, we'll probably use that book one day. We all can use it and teach all from that book. Because that's what I was telling John a couple of days ago. I said that would be. I met you just last year. I fell in love with you, and she read something from the book, and I said I must get this book to read, and I think the world needs that book. And so if we all can get this book at some point, maybe our next meeting, we can touch base from different aspects of the book and educate, and that's what that's my vision. I'm just hoping that we can do that. And if everyone says yes, we'll get the book. I'll send everyone the link, and so you can get the book. It's beautiful.
If you can, in addition to the book, get this summary,
yes,
because that is what allows us to have a discussion with one another.
Yes.
It's called Summary and Analysis of My Grandmother's Hands. And another one is a study guide, because this is real work. Unleashing the memories of trauma and then healing from them.
Okay, Dr. Valerie, do your little summary.
Oh, well, my little summary is this. Thank you all for coming. I really loved being here. I loved the conversation. It was very educational for me. What I would have to say to your audience, Xavier, if they're listening and they find themselves in any type of abusive relationships that's traumatic, I want to give them a website that they should reach out to, and it's called weallreallymatter.org. weallreallymatter.org. And it's a place of refuge and rescue for those who are experiencing any type of domestic violence survivors, and you need help. So I want you to go there. I work with Stephanie McGraw. She's doing excellent work in Harlem, East Harlem, West Harlem, in the Bronx. She's doing excellent work. So I just want to give you that. And I want to say again, thank you, Dr. Tanya, Dr. Watson, and Dr. Young. I really enjoyed you. I really did. And that book is an excellent book. And it's going to take us as a community to come together and be whole. And it is. Trauma is in our DNA. It's there. It's there. In our DNA. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Thank you.
And Dr. Young.
Wow, that's so powerful. That's really, really powerful, Dr. Small. And it's just such a gift and wondrous experience to be with all of you and listening to all the wisdom that I've heard. So I'm just like,
Overwhelmed.
usually I can't last more than 20 minutes, but I'll last an hour just fixated, except when I got my snack. Um, on what you all are saying was just absolutely wonderful, wonderful one. Thank you all. Thanks each and every one of you for sharing your nuggets and sharing your jewels.
Everyone, thank you so much. Thank you for Dr. Tanya. Thank you so much. Dr. Watson, thank you. Dr. John and Dr. Smalls, thank you. We will do this again. And next time, we'll have some more topics to talk about mental health. Everyone, stay tuned because Xavier's Journey is taking off with all the, I'm going to be doing some good things. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate